Hi, this is Charlene Turner, and I'm back here with the third part of the tutorial videos on a simple kaleidoscope cane. So you're probably all wondering, what in the world did she do with the red and black cane? Well, I'm going to put this aside for a second to show you what I came out with. And let's see, where is the cane itself? There we go. Okay, so this is, now I have to honestly say, I looked at that cane and went, ew! You just never know what's going to happen. So, let's see if I can show you a little bit better. So this is where it was when I finally reduced it. And I've actually used some of this up, so you're going to have bigger cane than this. Now, this is the first pattern, and I really like that. But for the sake of the video, and to show you, if you don't like the pattern, again, just reverse it, change them around, see, even I have issues going, match that. Can I match that? I must be able to match that. I know I can match it, you know, kind of. Now see, I haven't got this right. Somehow it's not right. So, let me see. Think about this for a second. You may be watching going, I know what you did, I know what you did. Okay, so there we go. There's the next. But it's not right. Again, take a really good close look at this. You'll see where I screwed up. You know, we all do things like this, and it's all a learning experience. Let's see if that matches, and bingo. I think I've got this one right. So there's that pattern. And you know, I could sit here and fuddle around with these and see if I matched up the pattern again the same way I did the first time. And there's always that possibility. But I'm just showing you, you play around with it until you find what you really, really like. Get it into your kaleidoscope pattern, and there's the red pattern. So I was actually pretty happy with this after I first went, looked kind of messy. Now, I said I was going to do a couple of things. So you've got all this cane work, and the first thing I did was make a couple of pendants and a couple of pieces of earrings from the pink one. So I just poked little holes. You can use a toothpick. You can use these. I think they're called stylus, with the little holes on them. And when the clay is soft, you just poke a hole in and then bake it. I bake these for about 35 minutes or so. So I will put jump rings on them and hang them on some earrings, and I've got a necklace, a matching set. So you can do that. So the next thing I did was to start a sheet, and you can see it's a sheet of just the patterns. Again, using your triangles, and you can create by putting the last pattern in. Let's see if I can do this. It's kind of fun to try to look through the camera to make sure I'm getting these in the camera and see what the heck I'm doing at the same time. So I think that's correct. So now I have a sheet. And what I started with was just a sheet of scrap clay, leftover clay, put it on through the pasta machine at a number 4 on my pasta machine, and I've got an Atlas. You'll be able to tell how thick or thin you want it. But I do it fairly thin first. And then I put my pieces on, and then I start smoothing out, and I'll tilt this just a little bit for you, pushing together the pieces so that there's not any gaps, because you really don't want to see the scrap clay that's underneath when you're getting your pen rolled out. Now, I know that when I put this together, the clay was really soft, so the patterns aren't matching completely, but you know what? This is what happens when you go too quickly, and that's why I say let your cane cool down. Let it sit for a couple hours before you start slicing it. And this is even Kato at a warm. So here's my sheet. So next thing I'm going to show you is this pen. Now I know a lot of people have different pens that they use. I got this at the Dollar General if I remember right. However, you can get these at Staples in a big box. You want the gray one. Just a simple Bic stick round pen with the M on it. Do not get the blue one. I tried the blue casing like this, Bic stick, and unfortunately that one actually did melt in the oven. So what you're going to do is take your pliers. This is hard to look through the camera. Ready? And you twist out the pen tip. There we go. This is interesting. Anyway, so you do this and you've got your tip out. Then I'm going to run this sheet through the pasta machine on, oh, by the way, this is about 5 inches, about 5 inches long by about 1.5 inches wide. So I'm running it through the pasta machine. First I'm going to set it on the 1 setting. Get my slices in place. Then again, I'm going to check where the seams didn't quite finish going together. Check for holes and gaps. And remember, clay is pretty soft, so you can just push it together. And at this point, I know by just looking at it, it's a little longer than I'm going to need it. So I'm just going to trim off the excess. Remember, the clay stretches, so if you cut off a little too much, you can get the clay on the barrel of the pen. Anyways, and I see on this corner here I have just a little bit of the scrap clay showing. Some of this is going to be cut off anyways, because you really only need about an inch of the, probably just about 1 inch wide. Making sure my seams are a little bit put together here better. And now I'm going to roll it, trim it a bit more, and roll it in the pasta machine again. This time I'm going to do it on the 3 setting. I always skip the 2 because on my machine it doesn't seem to make that big of a change. So this is the 3, and again checking your gaps. Once you get it on your pen, now if I did this again, normally I make, this is about the size, which is probably 1/2 inch. I usually make the triangles down a little bit smaller so you get more of the kaleidoscope pattern. So here's the pen, or the pen casing, I guess you want to call it, clay. And when I get this on the pen, I will keep smoothing it out. So you're going to take, I'm going to back the camera off just a little bit here. You're going to take the pen and roll up the clay onto your pen like this. And I'm just pushing it on there and smoothing it a little bit as I go to try to keep the bubbles out. You will catch some air bubbles. And then I see it's still a little wonky. I'm trying to do this quickly so I can show you some other things. Alright, so now I've got the pen trimmed and I've got a little bit of a lip here that's a little bit too big. You want to make sure your lip on your pen, or the edge of the clay, is not quite together. And I'll show you what I mean in a minute. So this is totally together, if you see what I mean. You match it up, and I want to give myself a little bit of a gap And why do you do that? Two reasons, because you are going to stretch the clay when you're smoothing it out some more. And the other reason is because you want to push down a little bit of the scrap clay so you don't sting the scrap clay. So what I'm going to do is push down the pattern so that the scrap clay piece are underneath. You're not going to see that lip. Alright, so now I am just beginning to do this, and I always wipe my table off because sometimes when you're trimming you end up giving little pieces of scrap here and there, and it can ruin your pattern. So I use wet wipes all the time, and simple paper towel, make sure I'm not leaving any residue behind. And then what you do is you look at your pen. The most important part is you're going to trim the ends, obviously, but when you're looking at your pen, you're checking to see if your seams are together, which right there it's not. And we can fix that a little bit more as we go along here. And you're also looking up. I usually look up to the window, but right now if I have that window open, you're going to get blinded. That's what you're seeing here, these lines of the slats of the shade. But I roll the pen so I'm seeing this flat edge, and I'm looking for air bubbles. You're going to see a bump in it, and you might actually feel them as you're going along. And then roll it, smooth it out, and smooth it with your fingers. Check your seams as you're going. Remember, the clay's going to stretch, so you're going to be able to see your seams. Well, this is basically what you end up with. Now this one's kind of wild, and you're going to trim your ends. Now see, this end isn't quite covered with the clay. Remember, you can always push, soften, work the clay till you get some clay on the end, or I'm just stretching the clay so it's going to cover the end of that. Or you could cheat and put just a piece of black or whatever color you want to use, or the pink on the end of it, and cover that end. Pound it on the table more or less. Make sure I've got enough clay to cover it. Remember to pay attention to the camera here so you see what's going on. Then I do the same thing. I work the end of this. So there we go. That gets worked in. And then you trim this. And I overcut it, which is fine. I can just keep working that clay back up on the tip of that. Flattening it until it gets nice and smooth. Now I will spend a little bit more time with this after to keep working the seams so the seams go together and everything's nice and smooth on it. And you can work just basically working it with your hands. You're not doing anything tricky or difficult. So once this is trimmed up, I usually hand smooth it out and bake it in the oven for about 35 minutes. And I would highly suggest the Bic stick. So there's that. Now, since you're probably wondering what in the world she did with that black and red cane, I'm going to save this piece. And what I do, the other thing that I can do, is I'm going to show you these little bowls. Now I have 3 shapes of bowls. Oh, before I get done with that, this is a little mini Alto tin. Those of you that carry aspirin, or me, I usually carry decongestant and antihistamine in my pocketbook. This is a mini one. This is a great little tin to do exactly the same thing. You cut it so that you've got about a ½ inch lip, and I'll push that together and fix it all the way around. But first you take your, again, now this is tedious work, this triangle work. You place your triangles and start building a pattern. And you just keep putting your triangles on the sheet until you've got it covered. I think I did that one in probably this scrap clay sheet at a 4. And then run it through your first setting, your second, third, and probably second and third, once you've got your pattern on and everything's smoothed out, and then you put them on your tin. So that was a quick how-to on a quick tin. But next thing I did, and this will be a little bit different, is I really love the red and black. So I decided to make a glass out of it, make a glass bowl out of it. But first let me show you. With these glass bowls, the interior of the bowls look awesome. Look at the shine on that. Now this, and this one's larger, and I'm going to pull back so you can see the size of the bowl. If you figure this blade is probably 5 inches, the bowl that I used for that one, and you would probably want at least 4 blocks of clay to do this, is this big bowl. See how big my hand is? Wrapping the clay around this big bowl. So this cool looking pattern came from this weird mess. Again, no conformity in there. Nothing is the same on any edge of the triangle. And for a simple one, let's move this out of the way. On this smaller bowl, I think it's a custard bowl, this pattern was just end canes, simple pieces of end canes. And I actually built this one doing at a flea market just to show people how the bowls are made, which people really thought were cool. So that one had no rhyme or reason to it, but take a look at this bowl. And by placing the bowl, or the clay triangles, and you can see the triangles on this, on the bowl like this, when you go to lift it off, to take it off, the interior, because it's been against the glass, just shines. It looks gorgeous. Okay, so I'm going to show you, see if I can get this back on the table. This little bowl here, this is about, I don't know, 5 inches, well, probably 4 inches across. This little thing is actually, I got this at Joann's Fabric. It's actually a tea light holder, but I'm going to show you how to make these. What you start with is you're going to start very simply, again, deciding what your triangles are going to look like on your bowl. Now I'm not going to do this from start to finish because it takes you a good, I'd say, especially your first time, a good 20 minutes to do this, or well, probably 30 minutes. And what you're doing again is you're building your kaleidoscope, matching up your pattern, and you notice I'm not putting them down. I'm not putting them down, pushing hard onto the glass, because I have a feeling usually when I start this I'm going to move them out a little bit because I want to try to center that around the round part. You don't want a glass bowl that's got a serious lip on the bottom of it. I want it to be somewhat smooth. You can have a little bit of a lip, but if you have too much of a lip you might not be able to get it off the bowl. I'm trying to straighten that up a little bit. You want to make sure your triangles are in there. Yes, I just noticed that wasn't right. Okay, so I think this time we get the pattern right. So I might have a few gaps and I can push it together. So the next stage of this, the strangest part about this, is you're just going to keep, and I'm going to grab some of the slices I've set aside. You're going to keep adding slices, matching your pattern. Now, sometimes these don't, you might have a little bit of stretch going on, or you might decide that, or a piece doesn't seem to really want to fit. But you do a little bit of scooching, and You may have to rearrange. So that's why I'm saying don't push these down really hard until you get the pattern back on the bowl. Or should I say mostly onto the bowl. And then you can start smoothing it. Now you can go as far as you want. Be careful with having a bowl that's got too much of a round surface on it. Meaning if the bowl goes up really quickly and sharply, you might have a problem putting the cane on. I mean the cane's on, because if the bowl sides reduce, get smaller, you might have issues with it. So what you're doing is you're just putting these on like this. You'll see that isn't quite centered right, so I'm going to just push it over, give it a little bit more flexibility here. And of course, that's why I tell you not to do what I just did. Don't push it down too hard until you're sure you've got the pattern where it's supposed to be. Which I'm double checking, trying to double check. It's funny because I'm trying to look through the viewfinder at the same time of doing this. There we go. So you're going to go around and around. Keep adding your pieces. Remember, you can move them around. You might find that you've got one piece that seems to be a little bit bigger than the other. Once you get your pieces on, and you could go all the way to the lip, but again, you might find issues with that. So there you go. You got that on. I'm not going to do the whole bowl because we only have a little bit more time left here. So you're going to make it so that you're going to have these points. This is what I call the points. But what it ends up doing is really showing you a couple of pieces of the design. And you can go farther. So you've got patterns. You've got 3 different patterns here. If you look at this, and this, which is actually your 3 kaleidoscopes. Oops. So when you get to the point where you're done putting it on, what you're going to do is turn it upside down like this. So you're looking in the bowl and see the gaps in the holes. You're going to start pushing the clay together. I usually hold this up to a light, but if I do that, it won't be easy for you to see. And just start putting your seams, pushing your seams, and you can stretch your seams out, moving them together, and getting them on the glass. When you get it done, and your seams are all together, smooth out this as much as possible. You're gonna, I don't care how carefully you cut, you're gonna have some pieces a little bit bigger than the other, and nobody really cares what the bottom of the bowl looks like, unless you're one of those fanatics that want to hand sand it, which it's not my thing. So do that. You want to get your bowl together like this, and then bake it in the oven for at least 35 minutes, again with whatever temperature your clay likes. Be careful not to burn it.